Welcome back to my channel, guys. I don't usually make videos like this that are timely and related to current events. I try to instead create evergreen videos, meaning videos that you could watch today, 2 years from now, and it would still be relatable, hopefully. But this is a pretty important topic, and it's obviously related to the content on my channel. It felt like something important to talk about, and it's very much related to a video I made about a year ago on the changes that are happening in Florida culturally as a result of politics. Florida is notoriously a conservative state, and it keeps getting more and more conservative. There are political moves that are happening that feel more and more targeted towards diminishing minority voices and representation of minority groups in society. So in that video about a year ago, I'll put it somewhere up here if you want to watch it, Florida removed its LGBT section from its tourism website, which on the surface, not a huge deal, but was one of many things, part of a domino effect of this thing that I'm talking about, with slowly and quietly removing less homogenous representation. And so this is now a continuation of this. You might have already heard about this in the news, that again, Florida is, as a state, quietly overnight removing rainbow crosswalks. A lot of places, especially in the US, will have rainbow crosswalks to designate a gay neighborhood or a gay-friendly neighborhood. And at the time that I'm making this video, this was done overnight in Orlando, Florida, right outside Pulse, a gay club where in 2016, some of you guys might remember, there was a horrific shooting. 49 people were fatally shot at this club. It was part of a hate crime. This shooter came in and just went crazy and shot at all these people at this gay club. At the time, this was the largest mass shooting in the country. Turns out the crosswalk there was made a rainbow crosswalk in commemoration, in memory of the people who were killed at this tragic event. It's one thing to have, rainbow imagery to designate a gay neighborhood so that gay people feel welcomed and, again, creating sort of an imagery that LGBT people are welcomed here. It's a whole other thing to create it as a result of a hate crime. So the fact that the state decided to do this overnight, and they did this secretly without even notifying the local government of Orlando. Not only was this a slap in the face to the local government of Orlando, and that's not really respectful to just go ahead and make this decision without even informing the local city's government of Orlando, but it's a slap in the face to those who were affected by this tragedy, by this shooting. I mean, can you imagine you lost your son, your friend, your brother, your sister, your daughter, and you find out that part of the memorial right outside of that club just overnight got covered over, erased, essentially. The mayor of Orlando, Buddy Dyer, actually went to social media to criticize this act of the removal of this, the rainbow crosswalk. He called it on social media a cruel political act. He continued on social media by saying, "We are devastated to learn that overnight the state painted over the Pulse Memorial Crosswalk on Orange Avenue." Pulse was the name of the nightclub. "This crosswalk not only enhanced safety and visibility for the large number of pedestrians visiting the memorial, it also served as a visual reminder of Orlando's commitment to honor the 49 lives taken." Now, the notoriously conservative governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, also went on social media and he responded to the criticism of this act by the state. His response was, "We will not allow our state roads to be commandeered." It's a strange word to use, "for political purposes," which is ironic because it's inherently political to erase a memorial for a hate crime towards a marginalized group. So this is classic politicians being political. But again, that kind of response really shows the gross lack of compassion for victims here, victims who were killed and their families. Even if this wasn't a hate crime, these people still died. I mean, I just can't really wrap my head around the idea of, as a political move, we want to cover up this signifier of this memorial for, again, at the time, the biggest mass shooting in the United States, in the history of the US. Like, can you imagine any other memorial being covered up overnight because the government decides, let's move on. Let's move on to the next thing. This is too much attention on this. It's such a slap in the face. It's so disrespectful. More importantly, it shows, again, this theme that I mentioned in the video I put out a year ago, that the state of Florida is clearly trying to set a clear political agenda of, we want to wash away this whole DEI and, the amplification of minority voices, and none of that. We don't want any of that. You're an American. We're all part of the same. It's sort of like putting blinders on to the fact that marginalized groups even deal with hate crimes, right? It's sort of, to me, it feels like diminishing the existence of hate crimes. It's not really about the crosswalk, right? Who cares about the color of a crosswalk? It's about what it represents. And then a spokesperson for the Florida Department of Transportation said that it was their duty to ensure the safety and consistency of public roadways and transportation systems. So again, this is all political speak to say we're doing this because there's no business for cultural reappropriation and ideology when we're talking about road safety. The roads should all look the same and crosswalks should all look the same. Meanwhile, the mayor of Orlando addressed that by saying this was completely adhering to the laws and regulations of crosswalks. It was built with that in mind created back in 2017, the year after this mass shooting, with those guidelines in place. So nobody's concerned about the safety of a crosswalk because it's a different color. I mean, it's an absurd claim to make that this is all about safety regulation. I mean, that's nonsensical. So it looks like the state of Florida is now focused on doing this with other state cities like Key West, Tallahassee, and Miami Beach is one of them. And Miami Beach is where I happen to live. So in South Beach, a specific neighborhood within Miami Beach, on this very touristy street called Ocean Drive, which is the last street before you get to the actual beach, super touristy, tourist-centric area. There's a region there on the street that does indeed have rainbow crosswalks. And it's, of course, meant to signify this is an LGBT-friendly place. There's a lot of LGBT people here, which again, on the surface, like, I'm sure there's people visiting from other countries who don't even make the connection that that's why there's a rainbow crosswalk. But that kind of visibility, for those who do know what it represents, I think it's important because it forces people, especially on a street that's so busy like that, Ocean Drive, it has to be the most visited street by tourists in Miami. I mean, I would imagine that it has to be that street. So that kind of visibility, right, on a very heavily circulated street by people from all around the world, it's sort of like a form of protest representing LGBT people. Like, we're not going away, and here we live out loud, right? And I think what all this really boils down to, the state of Florida wanting to paint over these crosswalks, is they're essentially saying, we feel that it is a form of protest, and we want to make sure you know that we run the show here. All of this is a power move. It's a political move. It's a power move. And much like the video I made a year ago, it's these little things that on the surface, it's not really a big deal. It's not infringing on the rights of gay people, to paint over a rainbow crosswalk. But there's a messaging there that is consistent. and it's particularly consistent in the state of Florida, in these sort of like little actions here and there that are meant to send a clear message to people who live in Florida, but also just to society, that they are sick of these minority voices being amplified, being more visible. And again, the act of doing this with the Pulse nightclub, I think, takes it to the next level, because with that, we're talking about a hate crime. We're talking about people being killed. In that case, it's a very loud message from the government of Florida saying, yeah, we don't care if it's a memorial. Enough of these marginalized groups speaking up and wanting more and more visibility. As somebody who lives in Florida, it makes me think, well, what happens next year? You know, in 5 years from now, will it escalate to another point? On that street in Miami, in South Beach, where there's rainbow crosswalks, there's a very famous gay bar called Palace, and they have drag queens there, and they do like drag brunches. And every time I pass by that street, which is not often because I hate being in, you know, tourist centric places, but I have to cross that street, of course, to get to the beach. It's always popping there, like 24/7. There's drag queens performing. It's not my thing, as I've mentioned on this channel, but that was my first thought when I read that now Miami Beach is next on the list for Florida's government to cover up these rainbow crosswalks. I thought, huh, 2-3 blocks away from there, there's this gay bar that gathers so much attention from tourists. Like, there's always an audience on the outside looking in, like, what's happening, because all these performances with the drag queens are happening on the patio, basically. So you can't miss it if you're walking down that street. And I was thinking to myself, could that happen 5 years from now, that, or even sooner than that, that the government, the state government, once they come through to check that the rainbow crosswalks are gone, they're like, oh, wait a minute, but this is even more vocal, literally more visible, more of this LGBT, in your face thing. We got to shut this shit down. And then you get on this slippery slope of, like, at what point does this become censorship? At what point, what happens after that? Do gay bars get shut down? I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist. I'm generally not a conspiracy theorist. But as somebody who lives in Florida, it's eerie because I never feel like my rights are infringed upon at all. And then these little things will happen and you're like, well, that's kind of weird. That feels sort of anti-American in terms of the premise of this is a country made from diversity and immigration. And again, all this is political. All it takes is a critical mind to see what's happening here. For all we know, somebody like DeSantis doesn't even care one way or another about gay people, but this is all part of an agenda to, I think, keep certain kinds of people in power who are homogenous. This is a country where wealthy white men dominate. They dominate every field, and you see that in politics more than anywhere else. I can't help but feel that all these things are just power moves to feed an agenda. But the problem with censorship or DEI stuff and diminishing the appearance or the voices, figuratively, of minority groups is that you kind of go backwards because you denormalize what was becoming more normal. And that normalization of these themes of it's actually okay to be gay, it's okay to be trans. It doesn't mean your kid will be trans or that you'll be trans tomorrow or that you'll be gay. It's important to desensitize people to all these themes. And so when you try to make society more homogenous, it forces people to cover up who they are and to be afraid of being honest and being transparent. And I think that's a dangerous thing long term for society. Please let me know what you think in the comments. This has been a much longer video than I anticipated. And if you're curious to read more about this news, I will share some of the articles that I've been looking at in the description box of this video. I'll catch you next time.